You're on.
Well, thank you. Uh,
Whoop. Except I just muted Zeb. Hang on.
there we go.
Yeah. Whoop.
I think I was unmuting myself, and then you were remuting me because we were both working at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay. But now we're cooking.
Right.
And just before I dive in, me personally, I love the back and forth of questions. So if the moderator wants to go ahead and just interject with any questions, I'm happy to field those in the moment, or we can also push them back toward the end, whatever, you guys, whichever flow you guys prefer. But just to let you know that you ask me a question, it's probably going to end up in some like tangential, but hopefully interesting story. And I'm totally down with that. So anyway, thanks for having me down, quote unquote, to speak, guys, and ladies and gentlemen here. And I'm happy to, I'm honored to, be a part of your club for a night. I haven't been to Salem in a while, so it's nice to make the virtual trip. I thought that for tonight, the narrative that I would tell for you guys, and forgive if you can hear the beeping. There's a couple of background sounds going on here at work, and they'll hopefully die off soon. But I thought the narrative I'd talk about tonight has sort of less to do with my own personal history with photography, and more about Blue Moon Camera and my adventure over the years through Blue Moon, and talk a bit about the activity we've been doing on social media. Madeline originally invited me down to talk about, we did a series of posts a couple of months ago about Black photographers, as part of our effort to speak to that topic. And I was a little bit uneasy to talk at too great of length about that, being, I'm a white male myself. And so I'm certainly not I didn't want to overstep myself. So I figured I would instead talk more about the work we do here at Blue Moon in general, and on social media specifically, and then bring that in towards the end, just to kind of demonstrate how we've tried to navigate that environment, and then just talk about film and film cameras and our passion and enthusiasm for that in general. Just out of curiosity, have any of you or many of you been up to Blue Moon? Have I seen any of you up here? Sweet. All right. I was hoping that everyone, okay, excellent, awesome, Dan. I was hoping that I wouldn't get everyone raising their hands, and I'd be like, oh shucks, now my whole talk is completely redundant to these folks. How about film photography? Do many of you have a background in film? A few? Cool. I know you're the digital photo club, but I figured, it was a pretty good guess that most of you had some background in film and or still shoot the occasional film camera. So let's get rolling here. I'm going to turn on screen share. I got a little bit of a slideshow because we all love pictures to go through, and then I'm going to pop back into video because I got some actual cameras to share with you guys. And so my screen sharing is currently disabled.
Whoop. How'd that happen? Crap.
That's all right.
I don't know how to fix that. I know how. I'll make you a co-host.
There you go.
There you go. How's that?
I think yeah, got it.
Okay.
All right. Yes. Share.
There you go.
Cool. All right. And mind you, I've only done about 3 Zoom meetings in my life now, so I'm not going to claim to be an expert at this myself, so you don't have to worry about any passing technical difficulties. Cool. Okay. So let's turn this into a slideshow. Here we go. Okay, so to give you guys an introduction, Blue Moon was opened in December of 2001, right here in the heart of St. John's, right off Lombard Street in North Portland. And it was started by a fellow named Jake, who's still the owner of the business, a crazy fellow who grew up on the East Coast working at Ritz Cameras before ending up in Colorado and running a camera store in Englewood, and then decided of all the things he wanted to do, he wanted to open his own completely film-based camera shop at the start of the digital revolution. It seemed like a great idea. And 20 years later, like almost 20 years later, this December will be our 19th birthday. So yeah, next year will be 20. We're still going strong. I myself, I lived in St. John's. I've lived in North Portland my whole life. And I first came across Blue Moon early 2002. I lived like an 8-minute walk away from the shop. Didn't know a thing about film photography, didn't even know I liked photography. But my girlfriend at the time had been a lifelong photographer. She'd grown up with an old Pen 1000, and so it was only a matter of time before like that camera ended up in my hands and I got hooked. And then early 2002, must have been January, February, so literally like 2 months after Blue Moon opened, I wandered in one day and ended up wandering out with my first film camera, which was a Nikon FM2. And this is the camera. I still own this camera. I don't shoot it as much as I used to, but for many years it was like my constant companion. More than once, our repair tech has told me that if this was anyone else's camera, he would just stop fixing it and just tell them to write it off, because every time I turn my camera into him, he says so much sand and grit and dirt pours out of it whenever he opens it up. But this camera's still ticking along. And so like early to mid 2002, I was just running all over Portland, just like a completely like rank beginner. Like I didn't even really understand shutter and aperture. Like my girlfriend tried to explain it to me and I'm like, what? Like, and then finally she was just like, okay, you just turn this ring and the needle in the camera goes up, and you turn the ring the other way, the needle goes down, just put the needle in the middle. And that's where I started. But I was just like out having fun and just like photographing, and I got bit so hard by the photography bug, just completely blindsided. So like this is an early shot I did using a roll of black and white infrared film. I made this, I was going to school, or I just finished going to school. I was getting my bachelor's degree in history from Portland State. So I had many bus rides. And just shot this out the window one day. I took the lens off my camera and just sort of held it in place at an angle, creating kind of an impromptu tilt shift lens. And I was just doing weird stuff like that, just because like I didn't really have any like rhyme or reason. I was just making photos because I loved making photos. Living here in Oregon, we have the best coastline I think that I've ever seen. So like many frequent trips out to Cape Kiwanda or Cannon Beach. This is Kiwanda. And then of course the St. John's Bridge. Like there would be some summers and falls where like I'd literally go down there every single night just to catch the different sunsets, because Blue Moon's just up the hill from the bridge. It's a 10-minute walk for me, and go down there, burn through a roll of Velvia, come back, get it developed the next day, rinse and repeat. And so it didn't take too long. Like of me like popping into Blue Moon more and more frequently, dropping off film, getting prints. At the time, the business was so small that the owner, Jake, would hang his own film on the racks in the lab, so it looked like we had more work than we did, just because otherwise the empty racks were kind of sad and depressing. And they only had 2 employees, and they were counting Jake, the owner, so 1 employee, and they were just overworked. And like one day, like Jake's like, "Hey, we're looking to hire someone. You want a job?" And I'm like, "What's it pay?" And he's like, "Minimum wage." And I'm like, "Is there any health insurance benefits?" And he's like, "Nope." And I'm like, "Let me think about it." And I gave it a thought for a couple of days. I just got in my degree, and it was a degree in history, which I loved, but like, what are you going to do with a degree in history? So I was kind of at a crossroads anyway. I'm like, "Well, sure. Why not? Let's give it a go." And so I started working here in Blue Moon, September of 2002. So I just celebrated my 18th anniversary at the shop, and the staff now has grown. I was employee number 2 or person number 3, and here there were 4 of us plus Jake, and today Blue Moon has a staff of about, I think it's 17 people, depending on how you want to count the part-timers. And so it's come a long way since then. And it's been an awesome job. There's been a lot of hard work. I'm not getting rich. I guess I am getting fat, but I'm not getting rich. But like, just the variety and the breadth of cameras, and being so personally like excited about film photography, and then getting to work somewhere where you're immersed in that 8 hours a day is a pretty incredible experience. But it's not without its pitfalls. As you can imagine, like, being around all these cameras, it wasn't long before I bought my second film camera, which was a Pentax 6.7, which is kind of like my Nikon FM2, but if you fed it camera growth hormone, you'd end up with something like a Pentax 6.7. It's a medium format camera that's really like an oversized 35 SLR. It's loud, it's heavy, it's clunky. I absolutely love it. It makes big 6x7 negatives, and I really like that aspect ratio where it's like not too rectangular, but yet it's not square. And I've gone through 4 of these cameras now. And I mean, when you take them into places like this and put them down in the snow, I guess I shouldn't be surprised I've gone through 4 of them. But and then there's my pinhole camera. Actually have a couple of these, but this is one of my older ones. This is quite literally just a wooden box with a hole in the front. It's about as simple as you can get. And I can show you some images that it makes here in a bit. And then my Hasselblad, this is probably my desert island camera. Like, the answer to the question, if you were stuck on a desert island and you could only have one camera, which camera would it be? And I think the Hasselblad here edges out the pinhole that I just showed you. In fact, this image of my Hasselblad was made a week and a half ago. Took my son up on a end of summer camping trip. We went up to Talklock Lake, just at the base of Mount Adams there, and I made this picture looking down through the viewfinder of the camera. I've carried this camera for so long and to so many places that the strap ends of my strap actually ate their way through the strap lugs, and I've sheared them off. So now I have to carry this camera everywhere by hand. So we've had a lot of good times, a lot of good adventures. And like, carrying cameras like this, I get approached a lot. The questions have changed over the years, but one like constant question is like, well, why do you shoot film? And the answer to that is it's nuanced, it's a little tricky, and there isn't any one specific reason. But if someone comes up to me and asks me that question while I happen to have my Hasselblad with me, I
can answer it simply by just opening the camera up and handing it to them and letting them look through the waist level finder, because the world's magical through the waist level finder of a Hasselblad, and it always catches people like by surprise. They always will tell me it looks so 3D, and so like that's part of it, right? There's like some of these cameras are such joys to work with that, like, even if there was no film in the back of the camera, I just have so much fun just going through the process of using these cameras. So getting back to Blue Moon, then you can imagine like that when you come at a job with like that kind of passion, and then you're like constantly surrounded by these cameras, like that kind of passion and enthusiasm is contagious. And so over the years, like we've slowly built this pretty cool customer base where like people on a certain level pick up that their enthusiasm for this is resonating with ours, because like, again, like we work really hard here, and we're not getting rich, and our retirement plans leave a little bit to be desired, but like we're all fueled by like this like intense love of the medium and the cameras that we work with, and that rubs off on people. And so we either get people who have that same enthusiasm, but we're more hesitant to express it because they think they're weird for shooting film in a digital world, or we get digital photographers who've never tried film and they've seen the pictures online and they want to see what it's all about, and then they come in and they quickly leave with their own film camera. What I'm saying is, like, our customer base over the years and our employee, our staff, they're kind of in a similar lockstep. This is David, our lab manager, who, now that we've hired a second David, we have to refer to this David as old David and the other David as young David, even though he's not that old. But I mean, like, for a long time, I was just making pictures in the store of all the people that came in, because it never failed that like you'd work the counter here and someone would come in with some like awesome photo or some cool camera, or some crazy idea. And like, you would just like learn something new yourself every day, even though you're the guy at the camera store, you're supposed to be the one imparting the education. And I think that's a big, like, you could ask us like, well, which came first, the crazy band of rebel photographers and hipsters and creative types who are drawn to film? Did they find us, or did we create them? And it is a bit of a chicken and an egg thing, because for a business that, you know, some people thought was kind of crazy even like 10 years ago, we've really kind of grown our niche, and up until coronavirus hit, we were really thriving. But like, it's people like Herbert here and his quote unquote service dog. And although I think the dog's only real service to people was making them laugh, it's like the customers that we get in on a daily basis is like, it's one of Blue Moon's, I think, greatest strengths. And we try not to let a day go by where we take that, like, we don't appreciate that or take that for granted. And we do what we can to enable that community and promote them and keep them going. And that in turn has paid off, because the support we've gotten back over these last few months, where we're quarantined and our storefront is closed to the public and people don't want to be around one another, and there's all these other tensions going on, like, our customers keep at it and they keep finding ways to help keep us going, and in turn we try to help keep finding ways to keep them going. And you know, like I said, a big part of that is our shared mutual love of like all these amazing film cameras out there. You know, we've been building film cameras for about a century and a half now, and that's a long time to build a lot of different types of cameras. And like our philosophy here at Blue Moon, like we're obviously very pro film. We've always tried to never be anti-digital, because like we don't have anything against digital photography. Digital photography is great too. Many of us have our own digital cameras. All the photography you see on our social media feeds is all done on smartphones. But like it felt like in our enthusiasm to pick up the next new thing in photography, which is the digital camera, a lot of these really amazing old film cameras were kind of getting overlooked. And so like you take like this, oh gosh, what is this? Is this, I think it's a Graflex stereo camera. And like this thing's so cool. It's like, it really only has two lenses, the ones you see on the left and right. And the lens in the middle was the viewing lens. And it would make two images at the same time, side by side, but they'd be offset by about 2.5 inches. So this camera worked a lot like the human eye. It's taking two images of the same scene from slightly different points of view. And then when you'd get the film back, you could mount that into stereo viewers, hold them up to your eye, and see the scene again with depth. And it's, on one hand, it's really simple, but on the other hand, like every time one of our old David, I showed you him earlier, he's a big stereo photographer. And every time he does these, it's like we're 8 years old again. And so, yeah, we have fun. We have all these really cool film cameras that we play with, from the Yashica twin lens and the Hasselblad, the Pentax. We used to get asked quite a bit, like, you can still get film for those cameras, or people would not really ask, but try and state, like, you can't get film for those cameras anymore. And our response to those has always been, well, yeah, sure. Like, this is our film shelf as of earlier today. And you're actually only seeing 2/3 of it. There's that front panel slides aside, and there's a whole other section full of all sorts of other types of film. Despite the number of films that have been discontinued over the last several years, there's actually this huge variety, especially in black and white, of films to try out.
Zeb, I've got 3 questions for you, if that's all right.
Yeah. And
Okay.
in screen share, I can't see chat. So
That's all right. I've got them written down for you. The first question is, what film sizes do you carry?
all of them.
Okay.
Sorry, sometimes I get a little flip, but okay, so the most common format's 35 millimeter. We carry that, of course. The next most common format, referred to generally as medium format, is a film format called 120. We carry that. Those make up about, I'd say, 80%, 70% of the films we carry. It's either going to be a 35 or a 120.
Okay.
But there is more than just that. There is a format smaller than 35 called 110. Some of you might actually remember your Instamatic, your Kodak Instamatic cameras, like either you as a kid or your parents. They were really common in the 70s. 110 film on a limited basis is still available. We carry that. There's an even smaller format called Minox, and it goes in these like little tiny spy cameras. I'll show you one here in a bit. We actually make the film. We make that Minox film for those cameras here because the company in Germany, Minox, that used to produce the film, they stopped, and we got in touch with them and said, hey, how dare you stop making this amazing film? Like, can we do it? And they gave us their blessing, and now Minox themselves buys the film for their cameras from us to distribute in Europe. And then bigger than 120, well, between 35 and 120, there's an odd film called 127. It's kind of like a slightly miniature version of 120. There's that. And then after 120, you get into the large formats, the sheet films, and you can see those up at the top up here. And those are your 4x5, 5x7, 8x10 inch sheet film. Go in like the big studio cameras or the cameras that where you'd see the photographer throw the cloth over their head. We carry those. And then along the top here, these are SX70 and Polaroid 600 films. Polaroid themselves stopped making film, I don't know, something like 10 years ago, maybe not quite that long ago, but another company sprouted up and started producing the film for those cameras. So you can still get SX70 and 600. And then Fuji themselves launched their own brand of instant film called Fuji Instax, and they make both a mini, you can just barely see it over here, that makes little business card size photos. They make a wide that makes like a 4x6 instant size photo, and then they make a square format that looks like a slightly smaller version than your traditional Polaroid.
Okay.
So there you go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you buy old cameras at Blue Moon?
Not really. The majority of the cameras we bring in on a consignment basis. And this is for a couple of reasons, but mostly it's financial. On a consignment basis, we're selling the camera for the customer at an agreed upon rate and commission. And then when we sell the camera, they get paid that commission. The benefit, there's a couple benefits to this. Benefit number one is we don't have that financial investment. And for a small store like ours, we couldn't afford to buy every camera we have in here. The other big benefit is with the consignment model, we're working with the customer to get the best value for their camera, that the best fair value, rather than trying to get them to sell the camera to us for the lowest possible value we can get them to, so that we can have the highest possible profit margin. So the consignment model keeps us all on the same side, so to speak.
Great. The other question, what do you think of, I don't know how to pronounce this word, Rolei?
Really? Mm-hmm.
Retro 80S, either 120 or 35 millimeter. And that was a Dan Platt question, so Dan, jump in if I didn't get it right.
We carry the Rolei films. They are by and large good films. I would state that he asked about the 80S, right? The Rolei Retro 80S, yes. That film, yeah.
Yes.
That's part of a little lineup of Rolei films. They have a Retro 400S, so that's an ISO 400 speed film. They have a Super Pan 200, that's a 200 speed film, and then they have the 80S, which is an 80 speed film. So you got like your fast, your slow, and your medium speed in this little trilogy of films. They're a black and white negative film. They tend to have high contrast, really crisp shadows, bright highlights. So if you like kind of a dramatic look to your film, you like a little bit of drama because you like a little bit of contrast and punch to it, then I'd say great. The other interesting aspect to the 80S film is that film actually has infrared sensitivity. It gets into the IR end of the spectrum. So if you filter it properly, you can actually make true infrared images where like you get the black skies and you get the white vegetation. And so it can be kind of interesting in that regard too.
Okay, great. The last question I had was from Matt, and it was, what about 620? I'm assuming that's a film size. My camera says, caution, this camera does not take 120 film.
Cool. Yes, the short answer is yes. We sell 620 film. The longer answer, and I'll keep this shorter, even though it's the longer answer, is that there's no difference between 120 film and 620 film. Like the film itself was exactly the same, and what differed were the dimensions of the spool that the film was wrapped on. And so 620 spools were just a hair less tall, and their caps at the end were narrower. So like if you, with some 620 cameras, you can actually kind of jimmy in a 120 roll of film, but most of them, the 120 roll is just a tiny bit too big to fit. So we actually take 120 film, remove it from its 120 spools in the dark, and re-spool it back onto 620 spools so that it can be used in 620 cameras.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, and see, like that's great. Those are great questions. And like that like really kind of epitomizes like what we do here. Like our jobs at Blue Moon were very much into like the educational component. Like we don't want to just sell you a camera and get you out the door. Like we actually will spend I have to warn you, and I used to joke about that to my classes. Like, you can ask me whatever you want, and I know the answer to a lot of those things. And if I don't know the answer, I'll make up something that sounds convincing, and it's up to you to try and figure out if I'm telling the truth or not. But getting back to where I was, you know, like we're really big into, like I said, the educational component of our jobs, and like trying to help our, you know, the photographers that come in be as well equipped with the information that they need to be the best photographers they can be. Because if they go out and get hooked and they're really successful making lots of good pictures, then they'll come back. But I wanted, you know, like I left off sharing some actual pictures of cameras, and I'm like, but heck, I'm here at Blue Moon. I could actually show you the cameras, you know. So I'm going to reposition. There we go. So, you know, like here's that FM2 that I was talking about. This one is a black version. Well, first off, it's a pretty camera. It's just aesthetically, it's so beautiful, but it's a pretty, like, this was the camera that for the first 2 years that I owned an FM2, I was learning more and more about the design of this camera, that just like my respect for how well built it was just kept growing and growing. Like, first off, it's all mechanical. Like, there's a battery in it, powers the light meter, but I can take the battery out and keep shooting. And the only thing I lose is the light meter. And that saved my hide a couple of times. You know, I'll be out in the middle of nowhere and my battery dies. Not a problem. And just like the sound and the tactile operation of these cameras, you know, it's something that's tough to communicate virtually. And I really wish I could just have you guys all in and I'd put this camera in your hand and let you play with it, and then you'd all want to buy one. But that'd be your problem. Kodak Retina was a German-made 5mm rangefinder camera, and it, like, vest pocket folds up and pops out like that. Instead of seeing through the lens of the camera, you were seeing through a rangefinder, and then when you focused, a little image inside your viewfinder would slide back and forth, and you would try and line it up. It's super quiet. That was, I don't know if you didn't even hear that. That's the leaf shutter at work. This is a Mercury II. It was made by the Universal Camera Corporation in Chicago. So this is an American-made camera. It's a weird camera in its own right. It has this big bulging disc on top, and that's because, like, in most cameras, your shutter is two curtains, like two rectangular pieces of cloth or metal foil that either travel horizontally or vertically,
in the Mercury's case, the shutter, let me see if I can get it onto a slow enough shutter speed for you guys to be able to see this. Here we go. Let's try a 20th of a second. So there we go. Even a 20th of a second might have been too fast, but the shutter in this guy is a big rotary disc that spins around every time you fire it. And that's not even the most interesting aspect to this camera, I think. It's the fact that it's half frame. So the frame it makes is literally half the size of your standard 35 millimeter. So if you figure a roll of 36 exposure film in this camera, you get 72 photos. And like, that can take you forever. So yeah, there's actually, don't worry about that later. Perhaps one of the most unfortunately named cameras I've ever come across. This is the Visco Wide 16. It's their STD. But what you have here is, it's a swing lens. And so when you fire the camera, the lens rotates from left to right, and it's sort of, it's a panoramic camera. And so I'll fire that one more time. But this camera takes 16 millimeter film, so it's actually smaller than 35. It's actually the same 16 millimeter film that you would use in motion picture cameras, just in shorter lengths. This would take like a 10-foot length instead of a 100-foot length of film. Off the top of my head, I forget where Visco Wide, made in Japan. So it's a Japanese camera. And then just to round out maybe not quite round out, let me position myself. You have the speed graphic, argue that the best made camera ever produced. Babe Ruth was photographed with one of these cameras. The famous photo at Iwo Jima was photographed with one of these. The crime and crime scene photographer Ouija worked with one of these. And you got this. It's a large format camera, so it's 4x5, but it like folds up into its own self-contained metal box. So you can put this thing in a backpack, and takes about that long to set it up. And you would do all your composition by looking through a ground glass. Let me see if I can get so I don't know if you'll be able to actually see through the lens. It might not be bright enough, and then of course, there's the Hasselblad, and this is actually my Hasselblad, because again, it goes everywhere with me. A good camera should. And, I told you guys about the viewfinder, but one of the other things that I just love about this camera is like the sounds it makes when you use it, and like the feel you get from winding it. If I don't have mine loaded with film, when someone approaches me, I'll totally let them test fire it, because there's just like, you can burn through a lot of film just because you want to hear that noise. And, yeah, it's 7:47. I could keep you guys here till midnight. I got so many cameras that I could pull down and share with you. But that is not the entirety of what we came to talk about. So I want to keep moving along a little. I'm going to hop back into screen share, and I want to get into a little bit of the social media part of my job now, unless there's any quick questions.
There's one quick question, Zeb. Matt asked, how does that affect a flash on the Mercury shutter?
That's a good question. Do you want the short answer, Matt, or the long answer?
Will it work?
It will. It will. And the Mercury actually has a hot shoe with an electronic contact point. You could actually put a modern flash on here and trip it. The big question that you have to answer is, will it work at every single shutter speed? Because cameras always have that flash sync, which is the fastest possible speed you can use with flash and not get a partially exposed image. Just looking at the Mercury's dial, I don't see any indication on the dial of a designated flash sync. I am suspicious. Its top speed is 1,000th of a second, and I would not expect that you could probably fire this thing at 1,000th of a second. I mean, the answer is ultimately, what is the fastest possible speed that you can fire this camera where the entire frame is exposed by the gap in the shutter? And with this camera, I don't know what speed that is. The rotary design is a bit odd in that sense. But if I had to guess, a safe bet is usually a 50th of a second. So I bet you could at least get it up to a 50th of a second and maybe higher. I don't know. That's a really good question. I'll have to look that up. I'll do that tomorrow.
Thank you.
Stay tuned to Blue Moon's Instagram feed, and I'll have to, if the answer is interesting enough, I'll have to make an Instagram post out of that.
Pretty slick there.
Yeah. So, cool. Any other questions? Ha! Yes, he did. Well, and
That was it.
yeah. And it's like the day that I feel like I know everything there is to know about film cameras or photography, that's going to be a pretty sad day. It's like that curiosity and like that coming to work and like every day there's something new to learn, or someone like Matt asked a question that I never considered before, like, oh, what is the flash sync on a Mercury with its rotary shutter? That's what, now I'm thinking about that question and trying to figure it out, but really I'll put that aside and I'll get it later. No, that's one of the best parts of this job. Okay, so hop back into, screen share, thank you. So while all this was going on at Blue Moon, on the personal side of things, this one day, and once this goes away, January 4th, 2006, I posted this image to Flickr, and I'm pretty sure this is the first photo I ever posted to social media. At least on my Flickr stream, it's my oldest image. So if it isn't the earliest, it's one of the earliest. So yeah, somewhere right in around early 2006, I started posting. I got involved in posting my photography on social media, and at the time, that was like before Instagram. I think that might have even been before Facebook. Like Flickr was like the main site, and actually I still use Flickr and I would post an image a day, couple images a day. At my height, I was doing 2 images a day. These days I probably do 2 to 3 images a week, but I'm still plugging away. I have 4,300 images up on Flickr. And it's actually, I was scrolling through some of the pages of my photo stream, just looking at, it's kind of fun to go back and see, 4,321 photos since 2005. But I, somewhere early on, I decided to take kind of a different approach to how I was sharing photos on Flickr. And one of the things that Flickr has always done really well is it lets you write whatever you want to write, however long you want to write. There's no limit to the captions you can put in Flickr. And
the Flickr community itself, like at the time, there was a really neat sense of community to Flickr. Like there would be groups that people would join and discussions going back and forth. Even to this day, when I do Google searches for some like weird film question that I have, like more often than not, the search results point me back to a discussion in a Flickr group. And so like the archive of information that's in Flickr is just pretty vast and I think underappreciated. But I spent a lot of time just thinking about photography and the philosophy of why I was doing what I was doing. And, there's a lot of photography going on and I felt kind of like, well, if I was going to be a part of the conversation, like if I was going to interject my photos into the whole group pool of conversation, that I didn't want to just be more noise in the crowd. And so like, as I started posting my images, I made a more concerted effort to write something to go with every single image that I posted. And if I didn't have anything to write, I would generally not post at all until I had something worth saying. And sometimes these descriptions would be really brief. Sometimes they would be just like the technical details behind like how I made an image. Sometimes they would be more philosophic musings. Here's one example. Sometimes they would be mini essays in and of themselves. So I'm going to go back into slideshow. So yeah, here's the top of my caption. Here's the next page of my caption. Here's the next page of my caption. And this is what, like 9 paragraphs long. And I wouldn't say this was standard. Generally what I wrote was much shorter than this. Sometimes, usually it was in the 2 to 3 paragraph range, but I mean, you can't do this on Instagram. Instagram will cut you off before you can even get through your introductory paragraph. And that's been really, really influential in a couple of reasons. Like one, I found that, well, okay, first off, when I first started writing, I would not say I was a great writer, and most of us aren't great writers. Like, that's why we're photographers. Like, if we could express our thoughts fluently in writing, then we'd all be writing and we wouldn't be using photographs to express our thoughts and ideas. And so doing this over and over again got me better and better about writing about my photography and sorting my own thoughts out, and piecing things together. But I also it was also really interesting to watch how people responded to what I was writing, or just the fact that I was writing. And it really, like some people would come at me and say, like, why do you bother writing all this? Because people on the internet have a 5-second attention span. Like, my boss was even in that crowd. He's like, why do you write so much with your photography? People don't pay attention. And I don't think that there's merit to that. Like, the average attention span on the internet is distracted and often short. But I also found that, like, when people reciprocated the amount of investment that I was putting in. So like, and me personally, how could I expect someone to spend significant time with what I was putting out there if I myself wasn't willing to spend significant time with it? And over the years, I found that, yeah, people really did respond well. And by sharing these thoughts and this information, it encouraged other people to get on there and write their own thoughtful responses or comments to the images that I was posting. And I'm sharing this with you guys specifically because while I was doing this for the past, 14 years, and like this was like forming like my approach to like how I interacted with social media. In about 2014, 2015, I essentially took over the Blue Moon Instagram feed. And like we'd had an Instagram feed for a little bit before that, but it was really helter-skelter. It was kind of an ad hoc by committee affair, very much like quick cell phone snaps of like just whatever struck whoever's fancy. And so it didn't really it didn't really have much of an identity first off. But it was also, kind of very happenstance. And as such, it wasn't getting a lot of like engagement, and it wasn't really going anywhere. It was just like, oh, it's like that little camera store in St. John's has this little Instagram feed where they just put random photos up. Great. And we had, I don't know, 150, 300 followers or such. And then one day in 2014, I'm like, I can do this because I've essentially been doing this on Flickr for almost a decade now. And so and let's actually hop over to it. There it is. And so I'm not going to scroll all the way back, but I started working on this, and like one of my first steps was, okay, we have to have you have to have a brand, right? You have to have an identity. I don't like the word brand. It's too commercial, but I wanted to secure an identity for us. And there were a number of other popular Instagram feeds out there that were running film photos, and most of them were sharing their customers' film photos, and they were already well established. And so like I didn't really want to kind of compete with them. And at the same time, like, while a big part of Blue Moon is developing and printing and scanning film, and we take a lot of pride in that, I think one of the really neat aspects to this store is just the vast collection and variety of cameras we get through. And so I thought, okay, like this is what we're going to work on featuring. Like we're going to focus on the film cameras and their stories. And so that's where we started with the photography. Meanwhile, I took that, those formative years with Instagram and learning that, a picture's worth 1,000 words, but a picture with 1,000 words is worth 2,000 words or more. And have made a point since then that every single post that we put up tells you a little bit about the camera. Generally, it's about the camera. And like sometimes those are biographical, sometimes they're historical, sometimes they're just like weird little trivia. Sometimes they're the stories of the customers who brought the cameras into us. We got a whole consignment of cameras once from the stepson of a man who had hung out with, was it James Dean? He'd lived in San Francisco for many years. His family has a gallery in the Smithsonian named after them. They have this big national, I'm blanking on the name. But like, so like some of the cameras that come in just have these really fascinating stories that, or just want to like sort of, share the culture that comes along with shooting film photography. So like this one I wrote about, the Minolta SRT, talks about how this is, the SRT is a generational camera produced in the 1960s. This camera is 60 years old already and doesn't show any sign of quitting anytime. Like this is the kind of camera that your father could have owned and used for decades and then given to you, and you could use growing up. You could use this going through high school, going through college, into your adult years as you start a family, and then pass this camera on to one of your kids. And that's, what this post is about. And, you know, in a certain sense, it was trying to take what we do here in the store with every single transaction, like that attempt to connect with our customers, to resonate with their passion and enthusiasm, to be educational and motivational, you know, to learn something new every day and help them learn something new every day, and do that virtually. And it's, you know, it's had a pretty, it's been pretty successful. Like, as of this morning, we were at 45.2 thousand followers. And like before coronavirus hit, rarely would a week go by where we wouldn't have someone from out of state or even out of country stop in. Like we'd have people driving on road trips from Oklahoma or visiting from Japan, and they'd be like, I follow you guys on Instagram. I just had to come see the store in person. And that's a really cool experience to, like, you know, to like create these relationships online. Then that, it, you know, a lot of times they only remain virtual relationships, but a lot of the times they turn into actual in-person relationships. We get to meet the people, and it's been a lot of fun. And I'm aware of the time, 8:05. So that brings, I got you know, just a little bit more ground to cover. And so, you know, then May hit and George Floyd's death happened, and the country that was already kind of a crazy place to be became crazier. And like a lot of businesses, we, you know, we really wondered, well, you know, what part can we play in this? How can we be a part of this conversation? What part of this conversation do we belong? And, you know, what can we say and should say and all that? And the approach that we took with our social media at the time was, okay, we did a temporary blackout for like that week after, where we just weren't posting anything. We want to just step back, let other voices have their moment to speak out. And during that time, we curated up a selection of Black photographers. And we thought, okay, this is something that we can do, that we can speak on. And it's something that, you know, we've worked on in the past before. Like, we have a great appreciation for diversity, and we've run Facebook excerpts on, like, here's women photographers you should know about, here's Asian photographers you should know about. Even did a whole series on Middle Eastern photographers, because the history of photography is incredibly rich and diverse. And you know, if I asked you, like, okay, what are the 5 photographers that come to mind, you know, like, the list you'd probably make would probably be all or mostly white, probably mostly male. And so we saw this as an opportunity not only to educate ourselves, but to help our customers. And so we ran, you know, we have 2 Instagram feeds and a Facebook feed, and we curated out 21 different Black photographers, and we mixed it up between both historic. So you got Moneta Sleet Jr. and Gordon Parks, of course, can't go anywhere without Gordon Parks. But we also tracked down contemporary photographers. And then instead of us saying anything, what we did was we read through their interviews and their statements, and we quoted their words directly. And that was the only captions that we applied. So we wanted to let them use, like, you know, let them speak for themselves as much as possible in this format. And it was a really good endeavor. I mean, I know Gordon Parks. I know Moneta. I know of him, but, like, it was an opportunity to go out and I didn't know about Quasi Boyd Bolden, a really cool street photographer who lives in LA and does some really neat work. I didn't know about Addison Skurlock, one of the most historical photographers on our list. He was photographing, I want to say the 1890s, and he was a studio photographer in, I believe, Washington, D.C. And so like reading some of his interviews was really kind of fascinating and like just a completely different point of view. And so, yeah, that was our approach. And then after that,
we transitioned back into our cameras, which honestly was kind of a sort of a rough transition. This felt really good to do all this. But let's get over here. We also turned it into, we collected them all, since nothing lasts for very long on social media, especially Instagram and Facebook. We collected all of the photographers into a Kodak post, which is what we call our blog on our website. And so if you want to check them out for yourself, you just hit up, you can go to bluemooncameracodex.com, or you can also just go to Blue Moon Camera and you'll find links to this Codex post where we have all of these photographers and collections of their work archived there. Since then, again, we're a small business. We're a small business that's struggling with doing business in coronavirus, but we've tried to still keep some emphasis on this. We started carrying a new book, or a photo book called The New Black Vanguard, which is this really beautiful collection of Black photographers. And we got in 20 of them, and we did a social media promotion where for every one of these books sold, we took all the proceeds after cost and we donated them to a local arts organization here in Portland called the Nat Turner Project, which does sort of pop-up art installations for photographers of color. And so we were able to do a nice fundraiser for them. And we've had a couple other photographers reach out with ideas. And so like, this has been sort of an ongoing project for us. But it's important work. And I think that's that's the extent of like kind of what I have to say about that. If you guys have questions, you're welcome to ping me with them. But yeah, let me transition really quick now and wrap this up so we can get to the Q&A. So if you haven't been to bluemooncamera.com, I know I'm biased, but I'd encourage you to go pay it a visit. We put a lot of work into our website. It's not perfect, but we're working on it. It gets a little bit better every day. The couple of selling points that I would impress upon you is, one, the inventory we have on here is a live inventory. And so every item, as soon as it hits our inventory, shows up on our website. And we uniquely photograph every, so like when you're looking at pictures of our on our website, you're actually seeing pictures of that object, not just kind of a stock image. And I promised you guys earlier that I'd show you, where's that pinhole camera? There it is. This is what that pinhole camera that I showed you earlier, this is what it looks like when it's brand new, not after you've kicked it around for a decade. But in some cases, such as with this camera, we actually like upload sample images that have been made with it. I knew I had those specifically for the pinhole, so I just thought I'd share a couple of the pinhole images with you really fast.
So yeah, you can easily get lost. It's the next best thing to actually being in the shop and being able to press your nose up against the glass counters. But last Monday, we launched a whole new section to our website, and we call it our museum. And that was born from all the Instagram work that you briefly saw, because 2014, when I took that over, been doing it for 6 years, a post a day. We have over 2,000 posts, and that's a lot of time and care and writing, and it just sort of killed me a little bit inside to know that all that content was just sitting on Instagram site and could disappear with the flip of a switch. So we've set about bringing all of that in and putting it in our own section of our website, and styling it after a museum where you can wander in, and we have these various wings. So you want to travel over to the medium format wing, and then within that wing, you have these you have the box camera hall, and you pinhole hall, and you have the rangefinder hall, and you're like, okay, that's cool. Let's see what medium format rangefinders are out there. Like, all right. So then you get these various galleries, and it's like, great. How about the Fuji gallery? And then like, oh, let's choose an exhibit here. I wonder if this was, let's try the Fuji 6x9. And so we have these nice little exhibits written up about these cameras. It's a bit Camerapedia-ish, this part. I guess I should have picked a different, let's get into a different, the Iskra. Also not going to here. But we've done a bit more than just create Camerapedia Lite. We have linked these exhibits to our inventory. So if you want to see like all the Hasselblad 500Cs that we've sold since the beginning of 2019, when we started this whole inventory system, we actually have historical records of all that. Or if you want to see what Hasselblads we currently have, you know, like if you find yourself at the ELX exhibit and this one's under construction, you can see, oh, you can actually go directly to that camera in our inventory. And so it's been a big project. We've been working on this for a couple of years now. And we have all these little like objects in each exhibit. So like this particular object here is a recording of the Hasselblad shutter sound. So anytime you want to hear that, you just pay a visit to the museum. And so this is kind of like our preservation of, at least virtually, of like these cameras, and giving a little bit of extended life to all the work we've put in on Instagram there. So I could go on easy, but it's 8:17. Let's do some Q&A then.
I had a couple of questions for you, Zeb. One was, are there new film cameras that you find interesting?
Define new. Like currently made?
Yes, currently made new cameras.
So, well, the cop-out answer is to say zero image pinhole. That camera is still made. It's made by a man I really hope to meet one day, a fellow named Zerniki O, who lives in Hong Kong, someplace that's maybe a little bit crazier even than the US right now. And he makes those cameras by hand. He seems like a super awesome guy. A few years ago, I did a project. I volunteered with an organization in Turkey, and I traveled to Turkey and taught photography to Syrian refugee children, and he donated 24 cameras and then took them to the local polytechnic university and had the art students there customize them and paint them by hand. So each camera was unique, and he sent those cameras to me to take to Turkey. So yeah, I'm a big fan. But You know, that list is pretty short in terms of there's not many companies making new film cameras today. You have the Holga, a plastic toy camera. You have the zero image pinhole. There's a lot of pinholes new on the market. So in the interest of brevity, I'll say the zero image. Any other questions?
The other one I had was from Madeline, and she wanted to know, how did you find these photographers, the African-American ones, and read the interviews? But it sounded like you had links on your website. So I don't know, did Madeline, did he answer your question?
In terms of tracking them down, started with,
That was what I was more interested in. Yeah.
Yeah, I just started with basic Google searches. You know, punching in search strings like best African American photographers or most famous African American photographers, and compiling lists from there. Most of those pages would include some of their images, and so then once I had a short list, then I would do more directed searches based on those photographers to like try and find interviews or to see more portfolios of their work. And it took, you know, it was about a week's worth of work, but when you go looking for that category of photographer, there's a lot out there. It's just like a lot of the time we don't look, but there's a lot of Black and African American photographers doing some pretty incredible work. And so like actually finding them isn't that difficult once you go looking for them.
Thanks.
Yeah, and that Codex entry that I showed you, we cited the interview, so we have links back to at least the sites where that interview came from. So you could also follow those backward too.
Did you need permission to post those? Anything? Did you get any licensing or permissions?
We didn't. We didn't get any permission. We felt
I think
that
I can plagiarize from you, which is where we started our conversation when I first spoke.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we felt that like what we were doing fell more into like the editorial realm.
Right.
And obviously for photographers that are no longer alive, that's a different issue. With the more contemporary photographers where they did have a presence on social media like Instagram, we tried to tag them and provide links and cross-link back to them because, yeah, if the whole goal is to promote them, then obviously it makes sense to actually promote them. Any other questions?
Not off the chat thing, so everybody else can have a crack at you now.
Like Matt took all the wind out of their sails since he stumped me with the Mercury question, and now they you know, there's no competitive drive to stump me.
Damn you, Matt.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go for it, Scott.
Do you repair cameras or?
We do. There are, of course, caveats to that. You know, I'd say depends on the camera, depends on the issue. But the majority of cameras, we have an in-house repair tech. He's been at it since the 1980s. Really good. He does most of our work. We work with another shop in Portland. Sorry, okay. I don't know how long I was muted, so
only for a moment.
Okay. So
I'm trying to unmute everybody, and don't know how to do that.
That's all right. Like once I started seeing the look of confusion, it's like, oh, something's amiss here.
Everybody can unmute themselves if they want to talk. They
Yeah,
can
okay. If you want to say anything, unmute yourself.
So anyway, Scott, the short answer is a lot of film cameras, yes, we can service them. You should get in touch with us. Let us know which camera you have, what the issue is. I'll get to that question about the Nikon F here in just a second. And And in a lot of cases, yes, the camera can be serviced. If it's something weird and esoteric, that becomes more difficult. Or sometimes you run into issues where the current retail value of the camera is far exceeded by any repair costs. And so, like, in that sense, the camera might not be economically repairable unless it has a lot of sentimental value to you.
We did have another question, Matt.
Yeah, about the
Zeb.
Nikon F.
Yeah. How often do you have to change the oil in the old Nikon F?
Every couple of decades. Those cameras are tanks. Seriously.
So's the guy who asked the question.
So one thing that you can try with your Nikon F that might clue you in that it could use relubing or greasing is fire the camera at its 1 second shutter speed and time that second. And, you know, if it's somewhere between 3/4 of a second to 1.5 seconds, that's pretty acceptable. But if that shutter speed's really dragging out and it's like a 2 or a 3 or a 4 second exposure, or it just sticks open in general, that's a good sign that you got old grease that should probably get redone. But honestly, like, I've seen Nikon Fs that have probably never been touched by a service person, and they still work, and they work fine. My last piece of advice on that would be, you know, one of the best things you can do for it is give it exercise. Like, even if you don't put film through it, like while you're sitting there watching Netflix, just hold the camera in your lap and fire it several dozen times and just exercise the shutter and the wind mechanism. I mean, imagine how well you would do if someone put you in a closet for 20 years, and you probably wouldn't come out feeling all that great. And cameras aren't much different. So, like, periodic exercise goes a long way.
Sound like my doctor.
Yeah, well, see, like, that's the risk you run, John, with asking me questions. It's like,
I was curious how you would respond to that, but you came up with a real answer.
yeah.
That's cool.
Or at least it seems like I did.
You did, yeah.
No,
I had a Nikon F. Oh man, I don't know how many, 50 years ago. It seems like it was a long time ago.
Yeah, they are. On one hand, I'd say they're amazing cameras. They're incredibly iconic. They had such an impact on camera design after them. Personally, it wouldn't be one of the cameras I would want to carry. They are clunky and big. But man, when it comes to reliability, they are really quick, funny aside. I worked with a guy on a project. He was a photographer in Vietnam. He was a rifleman in Vietnam, but his platoon commander gave him the job of photography. And he was telling me, like, when he first got to Vietnam, the first camera he owned was a Nikon F. And one thing about the Nikon F is, unlike the later Nikon cameras that have hinged back doors, the Nikon F's back door came completely off. And he said he was up in a helicopter flying over Vietnam. He goes to reload film, and his Nikon F back door just goes woo and spins out the door of the helicopter. And he says to this day, it's probably sitting in a rice paddy somewhere in Vietnam. After he got back to base, he traded in that Nikon F. He got himself a Minolta SR1 and never looked back.
Awesome.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah. Hopefully you can answer this.
Oh,
for
you
me.
got another one, Matt?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I have this Kodak here. That's a camera I was asking about with a 620.
Yeah.
It doesn't have any like feel on the stop here for winding the film. Can you give me an idea about how far I should turn it between exposures?
Yeah, totally. So if you look at the back of the camera, there's a little red window.
Yeah.
Yep. So when you load film, so like the way 120 film works, I won't go chasing down a roll, but it's a strip of film with a longer strip of paper wrapped around it, and that paper backing is pre-printed with numbers. So when you load the film into the camera, as you wind it through, you will see the frame number show up in that red window. So you load the camera and you just wind it until you see the number 1, and that's where you stop. And then you make a picture, and then you'll just wind it till you see the number 2, and you'll just keep doing that. You'll get 12 shots on a roll, and then after you pass the number 12, then you just wind and wind and wind until you see the end of the paper go by the red window, and that's when you're done and you can open the camera back up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you didn't stump me that time.
Yeah, even I knew that one. I'm old enough to remember that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can make the drive up here at some point, Matt, like I said, we have the 620 film, so you can order it through the website, and then in the checkout process, we have a will call option if you want to make the trip up to pick it up in person. Then you can bring the camera with you, and we'll totally help you load that first roll of film and get you all set up. Otherwise, we can ship you the film, and there's tons of YouTube videos that will also show you how to load it.
Okay.
I have another question.
If Catherine's here, she needs to get on that. Come on, Catherine.
All right, so
John,
what was the other question?
Yeah,
Question.
John.
I had some old cameras that took 616 film. Is that anywhere close to 620?
Mm-mm.
Yeah,
No.
it's 4 away.
Well, yeah, I can do math, Rick.
But for what? That's the question. No, 6. So, well, whether this is a real question or not,
It is.
I do have a real answer. It is, okay, you have a couple of options here. You will not find 616 film in no shape or form. So that's out the door. Option 1 is there are people that sell inexpensive 3D quote-unquote conversion kits, little inserts that you can put in that camera that allow you to load in like a 120 spool.
Oh.
Or there are online tutorials for how to easily make these on your own. Not hard to do. You just essentially have to get little spacers into the camera to bring that width down to the 120 length.
Okay.
So that, because it's bigger than 120 is. The other approach, if the first approach sounds like too much work, is just get black and white darkroom paper, and you can cut it down to individual sheets and just tape them into the camera. That's the nice thing about that is darkroom paper is cheap. You can work with it under a safe light, so you don't have to do it in complete darkness. So you could have it under a safe light when you do your cutting and taping into the camera. It's really slow. It's about ISO 2, so you have to use it in really bright conditions. And I even had a coworker once who he would cut down those individual sheets, and then he'd number them and set them aside, and he'd cut like 5 or 6, and then he would take old 616 spools and he'd tape all of his paper sheets together into a long strip and wrap them up on a 616 spool so he could load them in the camera and get multiple shots without having to reload.
Very cool. Okay,
So
thanks.
there you go. Yeah. Yeah, you might be able to track down super old expired rolls on eBay of 616. That's going to be quite the crapshoot, just in terms of like what condition is the film in. It's entirely possible. We've processed 60 and 70-year-old film here in the store before and had it turn out, especially if it's black and white and it hasn't been like baked or exposed. So if you do track down any actual old 616, you can send it to us. We can develop it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, good question. 616. Didn't think that was going to come up tonight.
And that wasn't a stump you question. I was really curious. So
No. Now, if you ask me what is the difference between 116 and 616, then that would be another stump me question. That's a question that I know the answer to about once every 4 months because I have to look it up and then I promptly forget it until someone asks me again.
We have a lot of
You got
old
anything
people,
else for me?
No.
We've got a lot of old photographers that have shot a lot of weird stuff. So.
Well, then those are my kind of photographers. I'm working on it myself. I saw lots of weird stuff. I'm slowly getting older too.
I'll get there first.
You have a head start on me. It's not fair.
Yes.
We have a lot of very accomplished photographers in this group too, but some of them aren't speaking up. But
that's all right.
If anybody's got any more questions for Zeb, if we don't, then I guess we don't have a whole lot more to talk about. Now, Zeb, this has been incredible. I think you are fantastic, and I really enjoy this presentation. I appreciate you coming and sharing your knowledge with us.
I enjoyed it as well. Before we move too far on, I will say that now that I've told you all where I work, it's not hard to track me down. So, like, you guys think of questions like tomorrow or next week, or you stumble across weird film cameras at some point, just either, find me on Instagram, you can find me on Flickr, you can find me on Facebook, or heck, you can just call Blue Moon Camera and like, always happy to answer questions or just chat photography.
Yeah, I think several of us have actually physically been to Blue Moon Photography. It's a fantastic store. I've been there. You people are amazing.
Thanks. It sounds like Dan's going to be paying us a visit soon, so we'll see him up here at some point.
I will be there too.
Awesome, John.
All right, John. Yeah, Dan doesn't have a microphone, so he can't chime in here. But
that's all right. I know how that goes.
Dan's
gone. I don't see his name here anymore. I think Dan's called it.
Dan's one of our longtime members of our photography group, and very active and quite a personality. You'll enjoy Dan when you meet him.
Like, I'm better with faces than I am with names. So, like, the name Dan Black, I can't say for sure whether I've met him or not, but there is a good chance that, it sounds like he's been up here a number of times, and having worked here as long as we've probably crossed paths, I might recognize him when I see him.
If he came up there, he probably came up on a Harley.
All right. That will be the giveaway.
Yeah, Dan's a character. We love Dan.
Well, like I said, and he fits right in because we're all characters here.
Yeah. And John, who said he's going to be up there shortly, is another guy we all love. He's been around forever.
And I look like it too.
Yeah, he does. His beard keeps getting longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you guys got a good group here.
We do. We got some wonderful people here. Yeah. So, anybody else got any more questions?
Yeah, last call.
I'll be in touch with you about getting in touch with other people, but we'll see. We'll just keep in touch that way. Thanks.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you bet, Madeline. Just send me an email.
I will. And I think I still will plagiarize and get more information about that blog.
You're welcome. You're welcome to do so.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, Madeline's doing a great job for us. Madeline just got started as our educational director, or whatever the heck the official title is. She's doing a great job. She's getting a lot of people lined up, and
that's great.
Yeah, and we hope to see you back again, Zeb.
Anytime, just virtually or if we get back to in person, yeah, you bet.
Okay,
There's
sounds
no
good.
shortage of things to talk about.
All right. Yeah. Yeah.
Take care.
Apparently you have
Have a good trip
Oh,
home, Zeb.
apparently you have no limits to your talking ability, so we're good.
Yeah, you be careful. That's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
That's fine. We love it.
Hey, Jeb, I'd like
Cool.
to just say thank you. It was a nice trip down memory lane here, and I've had several of those cameras.
Nice. Well, I hope they're good memories, Jim.
Yeah, they are. They are. It was a lot. It's, I don't know. In fact, I still have a Graflex 4x5 here.
Yes. You should pull it back out.
I'm going to have to.
Yeah. Yeah, if nothing else, try adapting its lens to your digital camera and shooting, there's ways to do even that.
That'd be interesting.
Mm.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay, are we done?
I think so.
I think so.
Awesome.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, thanks,
Zeb,
everyone.
thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Zeb.
Rick,
Coming.
can you stay on for a moment and answer a few questions for me?
Sure, be glad to.
Stay safe, everyone, and stay healthy.
Yeah, thank you
All
for
right,
coming,
thanks.
Zeb.
I'll see you tomorrow.
We'll be in touch, Zeb. We want you back.
Good
Bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Right.
Okay.